Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, a rambustious raconteur of improbable revelations, here to talk to you today about Mars square Uranus. Uranus is known for being disruptive, troublesome, shocking, surprising, unexpected. But why is he all of these things? Why does he feel like a lightning bolt sent from a distant cosmos, suddenly sending this one into a state of frenzied ferment? Well, his main job is to bring the new into the universe, to bring new experiences, new perceptions, new revelations, new ideas, new ways of feeling and comprehending and understanding. But in order to bring the new truly into the world is like trying to make space for an alien life form. If everything in the world is structured in a hierarchical, ordered way, solely to fulfill and maintain, to restrict and order what is already there, it doesn't leave much wiggle room or flexibility for anything novel or unexpected to find its place. So, if Uranus comes into the world and says, well, I like Earth, I like Gaia, it looks like it's got a lot going on for it. However, I can see that it's a bit lacking in this area, that this part of the mind of God has yet to sprout neurons and grey cells in that particular area of life. How am I going to get that imaginative, intuitive insight from the mind of God into the world? Well, gotta make space for it. If there's not enough room on the table, then I will take my big godly arm, I will smash all the existing crockery, cutlery and silverware onto the floor, and I will dump my new alien life form onto the table and go, ta-da! And all the people who have been sat there at the dinner party waiting for the next course instead are looking at some strange thing wiggling and writhing, betentacled around on the table, asking themselves, how the fuck do I eat that? Am I even meant to eat it? Do I eat it with my mind? Shall I eat it with my foot? What do I do with this? So truly new things are always going to be shocking because we do not yet have the level of experience or awareness to know how to respond to them. And part of the shock, the exhilaration, and the trauma of those Uranian experiences is trying to find a way of integrating this unlikely thing into what we already know about the universe, but also into what we know about ourselves as an individual being. And it is in our own individual being that we are likely to be most circumscribed, to say, I am this, I am not that, I want this, I do not want that. So when an experience comes along that seriously challenges that, it produces cognitive dissonance, which for some people can be exciting because it's like the prison bars of the restricted version of themselves that they have immersed themselves in have temporarily fallen away, and they can go on prison break and do some really wild, crazy, chaotic stuff that they wouldn't normally permit themselves, or it can cause them to have a breakdown where the refusal to accept that novelty is so jarring that it just causes the organism to have a meltdown. The computer of our being just says, this does not compute, we're going to shut down and restart and reboot our systems until we have come to terms with the new software. So there are a few analogies that I thought of about how Uranus acts creatively. Now let's say you are a musician, well versed in music theory, you're a pianist, and you're accustomed to the fact that in the Western European tradition, most music is comprised of different octaves of 12 notes from A to G. Then one morning you wake up, you go into your music room, you're feeling inspired, you're feeling like composing, and you look at your piano and suddenly you notice there's an extra note. There are no longer octaves of 12 notes. A 13th note has been added. You think, what on earth has happened in the night? Who's messed with my piano? But you're a curious guy, you're a pianist, you're creative, so you sit down and you start playing with this piano that now has all these extra keys to it that weren't there before. And so after the note of G sharp, you suddenly find H is now one of the names for the new notes in your new 13-tone scaled instrument. And you play around with this new note on the piano, and it doesn't sound like any note you've ever heard before. It calls the rest of the musical scale into construction. All of the music that you improvise with this new piano sounds strange, otherworldly, alien, exotic. Your ears take a while to adjust to it. In fact, at first it may just sound dissonant and painful. And yet, after a period of time of experimenting with this new note, you hear music of a complexity and depth and beauty that is totally different from anything you've ever heard before. And it completely redesigns your understanding of what music is, but also what it can be. We could also take this to another creative art. Say you're a painter, and one day you sit at your canvas and easel, you open up your box of colours, and there is a colour there you've never seen before. And this colour is so new, you can't even compare it to the ones you've seen before. It doesn't look black, it doesn't look orange, it doesn't look yellow, it doesn't look purple, it doesn't look green, it doesn't look grey. It is a colour totally its own, and therefore non-pareil, beyond compare. And you think, well, how do I incorporate this colour into a painting? What does it mean? How can it be used? How can it be blended with other colours? And what at first is a shock, once you become accustomed to it, can actually be a new possibility, a new way of expressing something you never even knew you wanted to express. But now that it's there, why not work with it? If you have a third arm, you're going to use it. So you can see that within these analogies, one of the roles of Uranus is to expand our perception of the universe, to pull back the lens further and further, to see how things are continually expanding, to see how infinity is ever growing and becoming bigger and bigger, and to gradually incorporate and integrate more of it into our overarching comprehension of the cosmos. We can even see how this has taken place in astrology and astronomy over the millennia that we have been actively recording its history. In that in the medieval times, the cosmos was centered around the sun and didn't go any further than Saturn. Saturn represented the end of the universe, the seventh heaven, where creation finishes, and presumably there is just nothing, an outer darkness. Many Kabbalists and philosophers no doubt wax lyrical about that. That's not relevant here. But then later on, when William Herschel discovered Uranus from his telescopic lab in Bath, which is now a museum, it's very cute, you should go to it if you can, suddenly this universe that had once been perfectly ordered and rationalized by medieval minds was made that one step bigger. Instead of having a seventh heaven, you now had an eighth heaven. And then you discovered Neptune, and you had a ninth heaven, then Pluto, then a 10th heaven. And then since then we've discovered all kinds of new crazy bodies. We've discovered centaurs, we've discovered trans-Neptunian objects, we've discovered scattered disks objects. We have looked for planets and planetoids beyond the heliosphere. You know, our universe is getting bigger and bigger every day. And when Uranus is going around by transit, he is doing the same with us. He is making our cosmic perception of ourselves also that much deeper, that much richer. And yet every time a new element is introduced into our lives or into our understanding, we have to make room for it. And that means re-looking at and renewing our perception of what we knew before. So for instance, if you have that view of the universe solely comprised of the 7 classical planets from Sun to Saturn, everything's neat, everything's ordered, everything's fixed. Once you add Uranus in, you've got to think, okay, well, how are all these things influencing to get each other as a whole? You have to look at the larger collective group picture of all of these individual elements going up to make a larger organism that we call the totality of life itself. And it's the same when we discover something new about ourselves. We think, how does this relate to what I already think I know about myself? Some of my pre-existing notions of myself are now going to seem remote, foolish, and too small, and need to be expanded and enlarged and rediscovered through the paradigm of this bigger version of myself that I am now exploring and attempting to understand. That preamble given, what effect does Uranus have on Mars? Well, as Mars governs our desire nature and our sexuality, as it expresses itself on an individual level, one of the effects of this transit can be sexual awakening, sexual exploration, and sexual experimentation. You know, Mars, just like any other planet, can go through phases where it is going through the motions, where it sticks to what it knows, it sticks to what it's used to, it sticks to what it thinks that it likes, and may be afraid to step outside of the boxes or colour outside of the lines. And that can be true sometimes, even if we have inklings that there are sexual elements to us that have been left unexplored and unmapped. We still might have some tentativity and fear in actually taking the step of exploring them and making them happen on a real world level out there in the cosmos. So you might be someone who has for most of their life been straight or heterosexual. You've only slept with people of the opposite sex, and yet maybe you're aware that there is a part of you that is bi-curious, that wonders what it would be like to sleep with someone of the opposite sex, or to sleep with a trans person or a non-binary person. But you're afraid to. You're afraid of testing out that potential desire. What if you get it wrong? What if the experiment doesn't work out well? What if you get humiliated? What if it's not what you want? What if you end up hurting someone else's feelings just for simply trying something out, to test it, to taste it, to see whether it is appealing to you or not? And all of those things can prevent us from exploring and experimenting because we are too concerned with what the consequences of opening those doors that are currently closed might be. We might find that we open a door and we don't want to close it again. And therefore our world has gotten bigger, but maybe also a little more unwieldy, more chaotic, because it may not harmonize with what we have already constructed of our lives and of ourselves. But also, when we open that doorway, we have no idea what crazy, unreal, strange, or multi-dimensional beings might come out the other side and throw a whole life into chaos, you know? Like that old claymation cartoon with the trapdoor, you know? Don't you open that trapdoor? Yeah, never mind. But Uranus makes us more willing to take those risks, to take the road that has been untravelled, because he is not put off by those possible consequences. Uranus has the mind of a mad scientist who is more interested in having scientific breakthroughs than worrying about what might have to be broken or sacrificed in order to reach those breakthroughs. The desire for new knowledge, new experience, for having that expanded view of the cosmos is more important than one's petty individual human experiences. Uranus is a god of the collective, of the total organism and chain of being, not of the individual, and therefore he is willing to sacrifice individual feelings if they help to achieve the purpose of bringing new life and novel experiences into the universe. So we become more willing to sexually experiment under this transit because we feel that any damage or danger or risks that are taken in so doing will be worth it if they help us to achieve the breakthrough that we do. We feel curiously elevated and risen above our usual day-to-day feelings, and more willing to embrace that higher mind that says, well, what if? That part of us that has that experimental playfulness that says, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And rather than being shocked or upset or appalled by the results, just goes, well, that's very interesting. I better write that down. There is a sense of rampant, rebellious curiosity there that is hungry for the raw data of unexpected experience, rather than just sticking within the confines and the actuarial tables of what it already knows. Let's give a more detailed hypothetical example. Let's say that you are a woman and you have only ever been with men. And there's been a part of you that has always been very curious what it would be like to sleep with other women. You found them attractive and interesting and exciting, but you have left that path unwalked because you're afraid of what you might discover if you actually have that experience. And let's say, just to add greater danger to that part of you, let's say you are in a relationship with a cis man. So, and you are aware that your commitment to this man forbears you and prevents you from exploring this unknown side of yourself. Now, during ordinary Saturnine consciousness, you might have reconciled yourself to that. And yet, during a Mars square with Uranus, our curiosity, our restlessness, our drive to find the answer to those unanswered questions within us can be so strong that we are willing to throw caution to the wind and say, you know what, fuck it, I have to know, I have to try it, and if the opportunity comes along, I will take it. Not only that, if the opportunity doesn't come along, I'm feeling so driven to finally answer this unanswered question that I'm willing to go out there and put myself into situations where it will damn well be answered for me. I have to know, I have to have that experience. I can't stand the thought that I might die with that part of me just being left in the shadows, left in the dark, left in the question mark. I want Uranus with his thunderbolt of illumination to light up that part of myself so that I can see it clearly once and for all. And you know, she might go out, she might sleep with another woman, and maybe it isn't for her. Maybe she doesn't enjoy it. Maybe it just isn't the right girl. Or it could be mind-blowing. It could be incredible. It could be euphoric. It could be a sexual revelation. It could be a way of experiencing and engaging with sex that she never thought was possible and has never had before, and which may even force her to completely reconceptualize what she even thinks sex can mean for her in this context, because it opens up those new palettes. It opens up those new possible melodies and harmonies. It opens up different combinations and articulations of the grammar of sensuality that she now has to rediscover. And that can really be a make or break point for many people, because the electricity that is generated when we finally have that new Uranian experience can be so intense, so overwhelming, that we don't always know how to handle it. It feels too much. It feels too abuzz. It feels like we could go mad from the shock with which we've suddenly had our perception of ourselves deeply challenged. It's like whatever we took to be gospel, to be law or gospel, to be gospel, to be law or to be dogma about ourselves, has suddenly been proven to be false. And we have to reimagine our scientific system of ourself and sexuality all over again. And for some people that may seem so threatening to the order and the safe delineations they've already built up around themselves that they go, no, that was just a crazy moment. That's not for me. I was just I was just drunk or hormonal or just in a funny mood. It didn't mean anything. I'm closing that door. I'm not opening it again. That is not me. It was just an odd phase or experience I was going through. It's not looking at, because that lightning bolt energy of Uranus, when that energy does come through, can make us anxious. It can give us this existential dread. It can make us feel that if one part of ourself can so radically be proven to be false or to be too small a viewpoint, what else about ourself might actually prove to be false? What else needs to be redesigned and redecorated? And rather than continually pulling up those electrical roots and seeing how far the circuit board goes, we might prefer to go back to those safe Saturnine conventions. So sometimes during those Uranus aspects, things can open up, and they can open up forever in ways that do radically change our lives. But there's also other times when we open that door, we see the mutating, writhing, strange Lovecraftian tentacles of an alien universe on the other side, and we go, nope, that's too much, don't want to deal with that. That's, or we might say, okay, that's there, feeling a bit overwhelmed and shocked by this now. I'm going to put that on the back burner, and I'll get back to it once I'm feeling a bit more grounded and ready and digested, because Uranus's revelations are thunderbolts from heaven, and it can take a while before we can come to terms with that electricity and find a way of expressing it on an earthly plane without just permitting ourselves to go completely wild. Because sometimes we do feel like that under Mars square Uranus aspects. Sometimes our drive for novelty, for newness, for freedom, for independence, to break free from all the shackles of what already constrains us, can be so strong that we just feel like cutting ties with everyone and everything and just starting all over. Now, this is just a standard Mars-Uranus square, so most people probably won't respond with that degree of eccentricity, even if we still recognize the feeling as there and try and find, a more manageable, mature way of dealing with that. But there can still be that wildness, that untamable electricity that is pulling us away from the everyday world of the status quo. Because the reason we construct these stable, rigid, sometimes dull or inhibiting lives for ourselves is that they offer us safety and security. They offer us the convenient awareness that things aren't probably going to differ that much from day to day. And that can give us a sense of solidity, of feeling we know where we are in the universe. Whereas Uranus, it can be like one day we're walking down the street, suddenly it's like we're on Google Maps and that hand has come down, grabbed us by the forehead, pulled us up into the air, and it's kind of looking over that Google Earth map and going, all right, where am I going to drop you now? Oh, that looks like it might be interesting. And during those Uranus aspects, yeah, sometimes we feel that would be an interesting thing to do as well. And when the transit passes, we can think, oh my God, what have I done? What are the lasting consequences of this doorway that I've opened? But as shocking as this aspect can sometimes be, sometimes it can also be a lot of fun. It can be very empowering and joyful because we have that devil-may-care energy just to do something. Instead of constantly worrying about the long-term effects, instead of always being calculated and thinking, oh no, I don't want to do this because then this might happen, then this might happen. And because if we take that playing it safe, cautious approach to life too far, we stop doing anything. Whereas when we permit ourselves to do what we might ordinarily reject or deny in ourselves, suddenly we feel like we're living. We feel like we're actually engaging with life, that we're going on an adventure, that we have leveled up and evolved to a higher level of being. There is that excitement of not just living in the humdrum realm of the known and the routine, but having an exposure to something that really feels undiscovered and fresh and full of zest and not stale and stagnant and too much a part of the furniture of our waking lives. So there is a greater willingness to say yes and why not and what if to any opportunities or experiences that come our way. We might go on a date with someone who's completely unlike our type. We might have a one-night stand with someone who is completely unlike anyone else we've been with before. We might engage with, sexual activity that we've never taken an interest in before and never thought we would. But in this mood, we just think, well, why not? Maybe I will enjoy it. Maybe I will like it. Maybe that will expand the sexual palette that I have to draw from. Why not? I'm willing. I'm game. Let's try it. Fuck it. Why not? One of the more traditional textbook signatures of this transit can be sudden ruptures, explosive arguments and disagreements and violent outbursts. And that is by no means a guarantee. It really depends on what else is going on. I've known some Mars-Uranus aspects where there is no conflict at all, and then others in which it feels like a war zone from first to last. And it really depends on the type of people and temperaments with which one is surrounded one's life, and the flexibility of the different dramatis personae in one's life as well. The reason why this can sometimes flare up is that because Mars-Uranus has that need for freedom and that passionate zeal to push the barriers and envelope of its existing world, if it comes face to face with anyone who is holding anyone or anything that is holding it back from doing that, then it can be inclined to rebel. Then it can have its Promethean tantrum. Then it can be willing to set fire to everything in the name of having the right and the prerogative to do what it feels it needs to do in this moment. If it's been committed flexibility, if it's in a space where the people around it are saying, oh, you feel like going a bit nuts and doing that crazy thing, sure, why not, go ahead. If people are enabling you, fine, can get along with them, no problem. They might even want to be co-experimenters, co-conspirators who are exploring these new frontiers with you. But if someone is being a saturnine moralizer, if someone is saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that, or you're acting crazy or erratic, or, just stick to what you know, whatever. If anyone is trying to hold us back and just keep us within the small universe that we already know too well, in which we are inclined to feel imprisoned, that is when we need to make a jailbreak. That is when anyone who we see as being our potential jailer or gatekeeper will bear the full front of our wrath. And there is a schizoid nature to this, in that Mars-Uranus, a lot of the time, actually wants to dissociate from its anger. It wants to dissociate from rage. It wants to dissociate from personal feelings, which it considers to be inhibiting and too petty and self-oriented. It feels that too great an attachment to one's own feelings or one's desire nature can prevent us from being true to ourselves and our own spirit. There are many times that Uranus wants to rise above conflict, that wants to rise above difficulties, that sees all of these disagreements as being rather petty and illusory and small-minded and not really worth committing to. It feels like it can just put up this glass wall against conflict and just say, yeah, I'm not engaging with that. I'm disengaging. It's not relevant to me. I'm going to carry on doing what I want, and I'm just going to screen you out. But if someone really tries to hold Mars-Uranus back, then, like I said, it's more than happy to pull the key on the hand grenade, to throw a Molotov cocktail into the crowd and say, anyone who prevents me from being free will be liberated from this mortal coil, will be destroyed. Nothing will hold me back, because my will is the will of heaven. And any violation against the will of heaven will suffer the wrath of heaven as well. Anyway, it's really hot and I'm getting tired. Not quite feeling that Uranian electricity yet myself. So I'm going to stop it there. If you have any comments about your experiences with this transit or aspect, please leave them below. I'd love to hear from you and learn from you and experience that Uranian expansion of perception myself. If you want to contact me for astrological or spiritual counselling, my email address is thestarsunraveled@outlook.com. You can follow me on Instagram at astrologyandunderwear. And you can support me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/starsunraveled, where you can enable me in my own crazy mad scientist experiments. Anyway, back to the lab, for a new sexual Frankenstein is about to be born.